Hi, welcome to Good Life Road. I'm Kathy.
And I'm Derek.
We're a semi-retired couple in our 50s, and we got rid of all of our stuff back in 2024 to travel the world full-time.
After spending 2 weeks in Kyoto, we're going to share our first impressions of one of Japan's most beautiful and historic cities.
We'll give you lots of key information that you'll want in order to plan your trip to Japan, and especially to get the most out of this amazing city.
1, 2.
So we stayed on the southern side of the Kyoto Ward, just about 10 to 15 minute subway stop from downtown. We really enjoyed this area. We stayed in an Airbnb because we were there for 2 weeks, but there were a lot of hotel choices in that area for 120 to about 200 a night.
Yeah, and we recommend whether you stay in a hotel or an Airbnb to do your best to try and position yourself near a subway station, because the subway system in Kyoto is not very extensive, especially as compared to like Kyoto and Osaka. And so getting yourself near a subway station will minimize the long distances you'd be walking each day, as well as like saving money on some taxi rides.
Something else we wanted to tell you about staying on the southern side of the Kyoto Ward, even though it's a little bit of ways from downtown, Kyoto is quite impacted, obviously, with tourism. And this part of the Kyoto Ward is a little bit less touristy. It's a little more of a local spot. So we enjoyed that. There were tons of restaurants, tons of little grocery stores, and also like prepared foods. And also, and this is, I think, number one for both of us and would actually probably make us stay there again, was one of our favorite walks in Kyoto, like including all of the very famous things, was the walk along the Kamo River. And you have really easy access from this area to walk along this river and see the most beautiful nature and people hanging out. And if you're there during sakura, cherry blossom trees, it's just really stunning. And it's such a special thing to have at out your back door.
Yeah, and that part of the river, which is upstream from the downtown area, is much more peaceful and beautiful. And although there's a lot of nature all along the river, it was really special.
Yeah. By the way, we'd really appreciate it if you'd give this video a like and subscribe. We'd love to have you along for the ride.
After spending a month in Tokyo, we took the bullet train, otherwise known as the Shinkansen, from Tokyo to Kyoto. It was about a 2-hour ride nonstop. Well, not nonstop, but you don't have to trade or change trains along the way. And it was about $85 per person.
Yeah, and this was our first ride on the bullet train, so that was really exciting. It goes super fast, 170 miles an hour, and a very smooth ride. The other thing to note about it is that the stops obviously are quite brief. So we recommend getting to the station early and being ready at the right car, because when you buy your Shinkansen ticket, it will tell you what car you're supposed to get on, and you need to line up with that car. We had to run with our luggage, and it was kind of scary, like to get on time. But the other thing I would say too is the ride is only a couple hours to Kyoto, but if you're hungry or want any snacks or anything, it's perfectly acceptable to bring some food. And obviously you'll have to carry your trash off with you as well, but you can bring like a sandwich or something.
Yeah, or drinks. So the Shinkansen will take you to Kyoto Station. That's where you'll be getting off. And from there, you can get the subway up towards the north into Kyoto, the main line that goes north and south, and that will also connect you to the other line if necessary. The train is about $1.50 per person, and you can use the IC cards, which are called the Suica, or the Passimo is another common one that you can use around Japan. They function just like the Oyster card in London. So bear in mind, it is cash only at the machines. So if you need to buy yourself a ticket, you don't have money on your IC card yet, you can only use cash at the machines.
Yeah, and another thing to keep in mind is the subways in Kyoto are a little less extensive than they are in Osaka or Tokyo. So you might want to download the Go app onto your phone just so you have it handy. That's the way the taxis run. Bob.
Our favorite way to get around town is walking. So it's pretty high on our criteria for cities.
Yeah, Kyoto is great for walking around. It's mostly flat. It's got a great sidewalk system. And Kyoto is fairly large, so sometimes you'll probably want to take a subway or a taxi to the part of town or neighborhood that you want to be in, like such as the Gion district or something like that. And then you can walk all over, and that's really the best way to see a place anyway.
So if you have any mobility issues, you might want to really research the destinations you're going to go explore before you go there, because a number of the really sought after temples to see in Kyoto are in the hills around the edge of town. And so there's a decent amount of steep stairs to climb, as well as kind of like windy hills going up into the neighborhoods on the way to the temple. In particular, a few to look out for in this regard are the neighborhood of Sanizaka, and which has like the Kiyomizu Dera up towards the top, which you'll probably want to see, and Fushimi Inari, which is the temple area with tons of torii gates going up the mountainside, which is amazing.
It's really cool.
Yeah, and you can actually see that in our other video we just posted. We did a nice little piece on that, which it's up on Mount Inari, so of course going to have some challenges if you have some mobility issues.
Yeah, one thing to realize about Kyoto is it sounds very quaint, or when you see pictures of it, you might think that it's kind of quaint. It's a city of 1.5 million people, and it's one of the most impacted by tourism. So we were kind of shocked sometimes how crowded places would be. Right when a temple would open, you would be walking down the path and you would literally be like nose to back practically walking through this beautiful garden area. But that part was a little bit difficult. So it is a big city, and that's an important thing to realize. But it is also pretty spread out. So there are areas like we talked about, like the Kamo River, where you can walk along and it's not impacted at all. And it's one of the most beautiful places there is.
So there's definitely enough to do in Kyoto for like a 5 to 7 day stay. We just talked about some of the temples up on the hillsides. One of our favorites was the Fushimi Inari up on Mount Inari. We talked about the gates just a second ago, but when you get up there, it gets really crowded under those gates, and it's worth it. It's really special kind of going up under those gates. But one of the things we highly recommend you do is kind of peel off as you get up there a little bit on one of the side trails. And I think all of them will be really nice. The one we did, we took off to the right a little bit, and it took us up to some of the smaller temples and then up through a bamboo forest without many people on it at all.
Yeah,
really beautiful.
Very beautiful and peaceful.
Yeah. And then you can keep on going, and we got relatively high up the mountain on that trail, and we were kind of dreading going back down into the crowds. And so we just saw like down the hill a little bit beyond some structures, and give it a shot. We did a backdoor exit, and it was amazing. It took us down into this beautiful neighborhood where we found like a really off the beaten path coffee shop.
Yeah, it was really nice. It was just a great way of seeing it without, experiencing the crowd so much, and just the peacefulness of the temple grounds itself.
Yeah.
That was really nice.
Yeah.
And another neighborhood we loved, which of course is a major reason people go, is the Gion district, which is also the Geisha district. It's pretty hard to see the geishas out and about. I mean, if you go super early in the morning or in the evening, and you're not supposed to approach them, but I know tourists do sometimes. But we loved this area anyway. It's very beautiful. It's very picture book Kyoto. So even though it is quite touristy, it was well worth it. And then there is also the Nishiki Market is talked about quite a bit. But when we were there, potentially if you go in the very off season, the Nishiki Market could be good. But when we were there, it was so incredibly packed that you could barely stop and look at anything. You were literally just moving as a herd through the Nishiki Market.
Yeah.
So we didn't really get much out of that experience, but you can pick your timings and stuff like that on what you do.
Another site that we really liked was the Kinkaku-ji, where there's the golden pavilion on a lake, like with a bunch of beautiful trees and forest around it. And get there early. We got there like a half hour after it opened, and it was already packed with a lot of buses lined up. Bear in mind, it was Sakura while we were there, so it was the height of the seasons. Again, it was beautiful. Lots of people. It was another one of these kind of back-to-back people kind of parades going through the trail, but certainly worth it. It was a special site.
Yeah. And as we mentioned already before, we love to walk on the Kamo River, and Kamogawa Park, which runs right along the river there, is super beautiful. And if you like birds like egrets and herons, and in the evening, if you go kind of as it's getting a little bit late, the hawks come out, and it's just a nature show like bar none. So we really love that. And that would be our biggest tip, is definitely take some time to explore that area, because it's quintessential Kyoto without the crowds.
Yeah. So of course, you've all heard of Sakura, which is springtime in Japan. That is the height of the crowds, but it's for a good reason. The cherry blossoms are beautiful, and we happened to be there at that time. So it was pretty special to be there during Sakura. It occurs late March to early April, and it's also the most expensive time, and you'll want to book far ahead if you do want to go there that time of year.
Another great option would be to go in the fall when the weather is still lovely and the colors are changing. There's lots of nature in Kyoto, so you would really get beautiful foliage, colors, and things like that. One thing I would recommend with weather in Japan in general is I would just pack an umbrella and or a light rain jacket, no matter when I was going, because they get a little bit of rain all the time, and you don't want to be held back on your vacation from doing something. And it's actually really nice to walk around in a light rain, so as long as you're covered.
Yeah, and then the more budget-friendly and by far the least crowd time of year is winter, and quite a few people do still choose to visit that time of year because of it being less crowded and more peaceful. So December to February, it will be cold, so you'll want to be prepared, but that could be a nice time to visit as well.
So since we rented an apartment, we had a kitchen, and the grocery shopping in Kyoto was great. There were lots of markets that had prepared foods like sushi and noodles and all sorts of delicious dishes, as well as, your raw materials for making food. So that was really nice.
Yeah, and some of those prepared foods at the markets, like a big plate with like quite a bit of sushi on it that you could take home and eat, you could walk away for about $6 USD. It was really
and it was
impressive.
Almost restaurant level, like a nice sushi restaurant in the US level at the market. So they're really delicious.
Yeah. So, and then one of our favorite restaurants that we ate at while we were there was ramen at Menya Inochi. And this place was amazing. It was awarded the Michelin Bib Award for good reason. It was really neat when you go in there, you sit around the kitchen, so you get to watch them doing everything they're doing over there, creating the fresh noodles, making all kinds of parts to what ends up in your ramen bowl.
Very elaborate and very delicious. Very specific on how to get into this restaurant. So if you do want to go, I recommend that you look up the instructions and figure out what times work for you, because you can't call and make a reservation. You actually have to show up at a certain time for a certain type of meal. like if it's dinner, if it's lunch, there are different times, and then you sign up, and there's going to be a line to sign up to get on the list. And then once you get on the list, then you come back at your allotted time to sit down for dinner.
Let me mention on that. It's well worth it. And for us, we did dinner and we had to get in line around 4 p.m.
Yeah.
We got a ticket and we got to pick what time slot we wanted to go later, and it was a piece of cake.
It was.
Yeah.
And we're not normally one to jump through many hoops for that kind of thing, but it was worth it, and it was a really fun experience. So
yeah,
recommend giving it a try.
Yeah. So another one of our favorite food and drink experiences was at the Kawa Cafe. We actually found this kind of off the beaten path little spot. It's got a nice deck overlooking the Kamo River, and it's a very French-inspired bistro, which is kind of fusion with Japanese. And so we had a pretty special experience there.
It's just really, the main thing about it is it's not even so much off the beaten path. It's like down a path off the street in the Gion district.
True.
And when you walk down this path, it puts you right at the river. So you go into this cafe, and then there's the deck opens out onto the river. And we got lucky because we got seats out there. But even more lucky is when we were sipping our Prosecco, this huge blue heron, which I'm obsessed with blue herons. I normally only see them from like a distance. This blue heron flew over and landed right on the railing, stood there for a few minutes, checked everyone out, and then hopped down onto the deck and just kind of hung out with us all. Two young women were enjoying some cake. He thought maybe they had his cake. He went over there, and he didn't go right up to him, but he kind of hopped over, and you could tell the owner sort of knew him. So he got a little bristly, and then he took off. But it was really just a cool experience. And even if he hadn't landed there, you're just looking out on this river. You're seeing people walk by. You're seeing the birds and everything, and just have a glass of wine or something to eat. We didn't eat there, but looked like everybody was pretty happy.
Yeah, that blue heron experience, while we were sitting, they're tall. He was pretty much looking us eye to eye.
They're big.
And one of the neatest parts was how like aerodynamic he was, because he would look you right in the eye and you'd see this pokey little beak. I think we can probably show a clip of that.
Yeah, it was pretty surreal.
Yeah. So all the meals that we had in Kyoto were really good, and the prices for the meals were quite a bit less than you typically see in the United States. The beers and the cocktails pretty much ranged around $5 to $8 USD. All the regular restaurants, not the super fancy ones, of course, which we don't go to very often. And then the main courses were around 10 to 15 USD per person.
Yeah, very, very reasonable. So, yeah, we enjoyed that part because we could go out pretty often.
Yeah.
So obviously a top priority whenever you're traveling is safety, and we felt completely safe everywhere in Japan, including Kyoto. Never didn't feel safe, never felt like it was overly policed or anything either. We just, everybody was really nice and respectful and doing their thing, and felt good whether we were out at night or in the middle of the day or somewhere crowded or somewhere empty.
Yeah. We've touched on this in some of our other videos on Japan. People in Japan are very respectful, courteous, and organized and structured. And so that lends itself to just feeling really comfortable and at ease.
Yeah, I think another thing as an American is kind of interesting to experience a culture like that. It's quite nice, especially coming from somewhere where, Americans worry a lot about safety, but don't necessarily live in the safest place. Mm-hmm. So it's nice to go somewhere that really is so safe. You can, not that nothing ever happens in Japan, but you can just feel this sense of that, which is a really, really relaxing thing.
Yeah. While Japanese, when it comes to reading, is a bit out of reach for a lot of us, the characters and the written language is very artistic and beautiful, and it's fun to be kind of immersed in that as you're walking down these lit up, exciting streets in Japan.
Yeah, and we always make an effort to learn some basic words for any country that we go to. So we did learn hello and thank you, and we learned our favorite phrase was sumimasen. That came in handy a lot, which is excuse me, and it's a polite way of saying excuse me, whether you're trying to get someone's attention or ask a question or anything like that. So that's a very useful phrase, sumimasen. And then another thing we found is that not much English is spoken, and quite often you will come across like menus that don't have any English or anything like that.
Yeah. So therefore, this has changed a lot over the generations of those of us who like to travel. I remember when our parents were getting ready to go to China and Japan, it's like, how are you going to read what you're on the signs, and how are you going to get around? Well, the translation apps that we all are fortunate to have in our pockets all the time now are game changers for accessibility into a place like Japan. We use the Google Translate app a lot. Both the spoken feature for when you want to converse with somebody, you can talk to it and then hold it up to them, they can read it, and then they can talk back to you, and you can...
But the most useful is the photograph one.
The camera.
Where, you take a picture of something written in Japanese, and it will translate it to English. I found this even useful at grocery stores because I was trying to buy soy sauce, I think, and you would think you could just recognize the soy sauce. Well...
They like sauces in Japan. There's a lot of things that look like soy sauce.
When there are 700 brown sauces in glass jars on a shelf, you are not going to know which one is soy sauce. And so that helped a ton.
There's no way we could have... We shop a lot because we like to cook at home a lot. There's no way we could have done it without that camera part of the Google Translate app.
Yeah.
You just turn it on, you carefully hold it there for a second, and then all of a sudden you can read it. And then you go on to the next one. And
so it's great with menus and stuff like that because... you frequently want to go to a restaurant. It looks really neat in there, but you can't tell what's on the menu. And you don't want to just like randomly point at something. I'm not that brave. So we would, translate it and you'd get to see what you're ordering.
And again, restaurant-wise, it opens up some of the most down-home local restaurants and for that reason, where they don't put any English on the menu, but you can go in comfortably and, make your way.
Yeah.
So for our overall first impressions, Kathy, take it away.
So first impression was it's absolutely beautiful. It's so historic and so iconic. I feel like everybody should get to go to Kyoto sometime in their life. But so I felt very fortunate in that way. It is quite crowded and touristed. So that's one thing to keep in mind. You'll want to plan your timings and stuff if that's something you're not that into, or just accept the fact that it will be that way. We just kind of accepted that it would be that way, but it was even more crowded than we thought at the sites. But the rest of Kyoto has kind of a quaint feel when you're walking around. It's just when you're at certain temples and that type of thing that it gets a lot of the overcrowding.
Yeah, so when she says plan your time and you want to go early in the morning or later in the evenings to avoid some of those crowds. Again, we were there during Sakura, so it was
which is the height
of the whole year. So we are
so we knew to expect that.
Yeah. And again, the friendliness of the people and the beautiful river. I mean, that thing was really like a savior for us.
Yeah.
We love to walk. We actually had to work a good amount while we were there, but we still got out on like 2 walks along the river every day at least.
Yeah.
And then the quaint areas of town are just as beautiful as some of those temples. So some of our favorite temples that we came upon in town actually were in our neighborhood, between where we were staying and the river. And so when you're walking along, you can go into any of the temples anywhere along the way and do it. We stumbled upon some amazing, peaceful, beautiful, artistic
temples. And we had fun just hanging out in the town, just kind of wandering around. You don't have to just do the touristy things. It's kind of neat to see, you know, where are people shopping? Where are
Mhm.
they, you know, going to get shoes or whatever, and like just kind of exploring town and seeing the crossing guards. I still remember these two older gentlemen that were the crossing guards near the mall, and they were so sweet and sincere with their batons and their seriousness about it, but so kind and polite. And yeah, we just had a great time.
Yeah. So if you got some value out of this video, please give it a like and subscribe. Come along with us as we explore the world together.
See you next Sunday.